We're gonna learn animation in Moho and animate everything in Moho. It's easier than using a yo-yo, yeah. Now it's time to learn to use Moho.
Alright, here we are in Moho. And so the first thing I want to do is make some type of a head shape. I'm just going to start with a basic circle. We have one layer and we are on frame 0. And I'm just going to make a circle that's going to essentially be our head shape. I'm now going to make sure I don't have any of the points selected. I'm going to click on the shape. We already have a shape, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and include strokes on this. And we're going to create shape, and then we're going to go over here, select that shape, make sure stroke is also enabled, and I'm going to change the color on it real quick. A lot of this stuff is the basics that you've seen in my other tutorials, but if you're confused, I'm just trying to get this set up real quick so we have something to work with. So once that's done, you can see we have just a basic head shape. We can move around some of these points to get a little more correct head shape, I guess, or something like that. Let's throw on a couple of ears just so we have something to work with here as well. So I'm just going to take this and go ear right. Probably should have named the head layer as well, so let's just double click that. We'll put head, or you could put face, whatever you want, because this will eventually need to be grouped into an actual group. Alright, so let's go ahead and now add our ear on the ear layer. I'm just going to make another circle here, and eventually this is going to be behind the other. So we'll just do a, let me see if that does that. It does. So let's go ahead with auto stroke selected and just pull that like so. That's going to be our rudimentary ear. We do want this behind, the head, so we'll just drag it down there to behind the head for the moment. We're going to also duplicate that layer, so we're just going to right click on it between that little arrow and the name, and we're going to go duplicate layer. This needs to be renamed to RL, ear L, and now we can move that one over by grabbing its layer and just shifting that over. Something to note, you see how this is offset? We can really easily fix that by just come down here and selecting origin and then moving that origin to the center. That way when you click back on the layer again, it'll just be surrounding that. You can do that with both of these. You can see it's off. I'm not sure why it doesn't default to the size, but it doesn't. So now we're set. We can do the same thing with the head, making sure that that's a decent point for the head. Actually, I would probably choose that normally, because that's going to be kind of where it pivots on the neck. So the ears are behind, the head is on top, and now we need a couple of eyes, mouth, and nose just so we have something to work with here. I'm probably going to make a little neck layer. So let's go ahead and create a new vector layer here. We're going to call it neck, and this will just be to kind of flesh out the whole head area. I'm just going to use a little rectangle for that. Just pull that down and move that down now behind the head layer, and we can put that wherever we want, just kind of like so. Alright, so we're going to make a pupil now, so we need to make a new layer, vector, and we're going to call this eye, right? And it's just going to be a black dot for simplicity's sake for this tutorial. This is going to be his eye, and you notice it's got the wrong colors. We just want this one black. So we're going to deselect that, and we're going to make sure on the shape here, we click on there. This one's just to make sure that it is set correctly. We're just going to use fill on this one. We're going to create shape, then we're going to go back to our shape selection, make sure it is selected by having the checker look, and then we're going to select fill here. If it's some kind of other color, it'll look like it's transparent. Just come and do what I said, and when you come over here to the fill, just make that black and say okay, and now we'll have a black dot where the eye is. We're going to want to duplicate that as well, so I'm going to go right click, duplicate layer, and we're going to call this IL. If I'm going too fast, I apologize. It's just a quick tutorial. We're going to move that IL, grab the layer, You can center these as well again if you like. I think it's a good idea, so I'm going to do both of them while I'm here in the tool. Now you can grab that IL, grab its layer and move it over. Right there, essentially. Good enough. So we're going to create another layer, vector layer. We're going to call this nose. We're going to put nose there, and we're just going to draw a line here, from here to here to here. And we can even leave that roundedness. Now it's just a line right now, so we need to make sure nothing's selected there. But now if we go in and click on the line, it'll select all the points. We can go back to here to our create shape tool. We just want stroke. We're going to go to create shape. Don't click connect and create, it'll make a whole shape. So we have a stroke on that. You can see we go back to our select shape tool, and now we can up or raise the size of that if we want. And again, I like to thin these edges out a little bit if we can using our line width tool, and deselect, and there we go. So now just a simple mouth. We're not going to do an open mouth on this one. I think just a line mouth to explain. This works with grouped layers, that have multiple mouths in there for switch layers. This works also with mouths with multiple layers inside of a folder for morphing, changing the shape of the mouth, animating it that way. This also works with bone dial controllers. So right now we're just going to do a simple mouth. So I'm just going to go with a vector layer again, call this mouth, and we're going to just draw like a line, make him kind of happy. You don't want to upset guy here. We press enter, go through that process again, and making sure you select the line, go back to create shape and make sure it's on stroke, create shape, and we go back over here, deselect. There you go. Good enough. Let's leave it this way to start with, and I can add some stuff and explain a little better as we go. Now you're going to want to be able to turn the head, and to do so, you can hand animate it on the timeline, but that's going to be very tedious and take a long time. So we're going to want to combine all these elements of the head into a single folder, which is basically a single group, which makes kind of like a single object that you still have access to all the parts. So on here, we're going to select the mouth, nose, the eyes, the head, and the two ear layers as well. You'll see what goes on with those. The neck layer is part of the body, or its own thing here. So with those all selected, right next to the name here, I'm going to right click and go group with selection, and we're going to rename that to head. It's okay if it's the same name as the one inside the folder, but now it drops to the back because our neck is here. So we just want to move the head layer above the neck layer, and it drops down there, and we're in good shape. If I was to move the head layer around now, it moves, it rotates, and it should rotate from that point, which it does, and that's just a standard setup here. However, we want to be able to rotate the head. To do that, we need to create an action and a smart bone to be able to do that with. And we also need to mask certain things off so they don't stick out of the side of the face when they turn, and so on. Another thing is, when we turn the head to the side, we want to make sure our ears come forward and behind as that head turns. So that's a couple things we're going to be dealing with here. To make this easier for building future characters, I'm going to take this head layer and the neck layer, and we're going to create a group for those. So we're going to put this together. We're going to right click and select group with selection, and this is going to be called dude. We're going to call this dude, and now dude is the entire thing. You see it's all selected. In here we have the head layer and the neck layer. We're going to go to this dude layer, which is the whole thing, and we're going to turn that by right clicking into a convert to bone. It's going to become a bone layer. This is where you can draw bones and animate stuff using those bones. But all the bones have to be drawn on frame 0. All the setup is done on frame 0, and then all the bones have to be put on this bone layer. Then we will decide what they control after. So on this bone layer, we need to make a couple of bones. So first one, right here on add bone, we're just going to stick it in the neck, and then we're going to add one more like that, just connected to it. They are parented. If you screw it up, go back and start this over again. They're parented to each other, so they work properly. Now, with those in there, they do have influence on the objects, and we need to decide how they're going to do that. In this particular case, though, we're going to come down here to bone power. You can see the red and the blue here of the two different bones. If we were to manipulate these bones right now, they work because it's a very simple setup. You see that neck pinching as this goes this way? That's due to the bone power. There's an easier way at this point, if it's just this simple of a character, and it's what we're going to do, to simplify this process for the moment. So right now we're just going to go to our bone power, and we're just going to click and drag to the left to turn the power off on those bones. If we were to move those bones now, they're not going to do anything. We're going to bind these bones to the specific layers though. So first things first, we're going to bind the head bone to this head group and the neck bone to this neck object. So I'm going to come here, select the head layer, and we're going to come over here to this bind layer button, click it, and then select which bone we want to combine that to or bind it to. We click here, it'll turn dark red or thick red lines, and now that is bound to that bone. If we go down here to the neck layer now, with the same button right here selected, because it's not a group, it's going to have all these different choices, but it's just going to be right here under the bone menu, and we're going to bind it to that one by just selecting it with the bind layer button pressed. So now if we move those layers, they will work again. So we're going to go over here and manipulate this bone. It obviously moves. We pick this one, it obviously does what it needs to do. Okay, this one just sort of moves because it's acting like a transform, and this one moves because it is allowed to rotate those bones. Okay, now we need to figure out how to turn the head. Well, same kind of situation. We're going to come back over here, deselect everything, go back to your bone layer, deselect all the bones. I just kind of select nothing in the open space. The bones will be blue. We need to create another new bone here, and this is for our smart bone dial to turn the head. We're not going to move the head with this bone, so to speak. We can, but we're not going to here, and we're just going to draw a bone, and this is going to be called head turn. So I'm just going to go up here and rename it to head turn, and there we go. It won't do anything now because we haven't told it what to do. So first off, we're going to take that bone, make sure it's highlighted. We're going to go into bone all the way down to make smart bone dial and click on that. We're going to decide now, there's our head turn, which I spelled wrong. It's going to go from -90 to +90, meaning it's going all the way from the left, all the way to the right, or whatever you set up for it to do. It'll go from a negative to a positive version. It's going to take place over 100 frames, and this is going to create two separate actions for you, positive and negative separate actions. It makes a difference when you need it, but we're just going to leave that checked, and we're going to say OK. We're going to jump into this brand new timeline here just for the action, just for this bone. Eventually we'll come back. This is not the main timeline. You have to always remember that. This one you don't have to be on frame 0, but frame 0 is still here for setup reasons. But if you animate this over time, you can make keyframes along this timeline for where the head needs to be or whatever needs to change animation-wise up to the point you've specified that action should end. You'll see what I mean. So if we move our timeline forward, it's going to move this bone because it is set up to do so. So this is going to say when this reaches frame 100, this bone will be turned to the left, and now we have to tell it, or the layers, what they're going to be doing when that bone is in that position. So we're going to come down here to head. We're going to open the head here, and we're going to go to the different layers here, and there's all your different parts, and we're going to move them one at a time into the position they need to be in when the head is turned to, well, I should say his right. So as I take the mouth, it's going to be able to be selected at a frame 100, which we're still on here. I'm going to take that mouth and select it. You can do this by layer, but I'd rather do points. You can get in trouble sometimes with moving the layers. And we're going to take that and we're going to select our move tool. And it does select the layer based on the points. So I'm just going to move it over here, and you see it comes off of the head. We're going to solve that in a minute. So just do that. And now when you pull back on your little timeline here, you can see that it moves from frame 0 to 100. So just leave that on frame 100. And now we're going to jump to the nose. And we're going to select the points of the nose. We're going to select the move tool, and we're going to move that where we want it. By the time this head turn happens, we can even back it up to make sure it's going, you know, the right way. It's moving a little bit down, so I probably want to move it slightly up, just a little. There we go. Done there. Back on frame 100 still, we're going to move the eye left, but I'd rather move the eye right first. Yeah, let's just grab that. I have my cursor here set to lasso mode. That's how I'm able to draw around those points. We're going to take this eye now and move it over to approximately where it would be. And we also want to make this one a little bit smaller, because as things move away from the camera, they're going to shrink a little bit, because this one's going to be larger. This is going to get smaller as it moves away. And you can just do that by adjusting these points on the corner controls. You can see if you're here, you're turning it, and if you go here, you're actually scaling it. So you can make that a little bit smaller, move it back into position. And then of course you can check the movement. Perfect. And then we're going to go down to the eye left, grab its points, and we're going to move it over to where it needs to be when it's in its final position. Okay, so now that we have all those pieces moved over, we need to do the ears as well. We need to do one special thing here in the head group though, and we need to be able to animate the layer order. So let's go back to the main line here real quick, double click on it, and we're back here. In this head layer, we want to double click it, and we're going to go here to depth sort. And we're going to click right here, enable animated layer order. That way you can move your layers up and down with keyframes, and they will change their layer order when you specify that they need to do so. Click OK, and that way the ear can pop into the front or behind the head when the head turns, and so on. So right now we're going to go back into that head turn, double click it again. We're back in the action again, move definitely up to a frame 100. Still cool to see that move, isn't it? And we're going to go here to frame 100, and while this is turned to the left, we need to change where our ears are now. So the back ear, the right ear, is the easiest one to do. We're just going to grab our points for it. We're going to just take it basically and shift it back to approximately where it would be on the other side. We can even make it a little bit smaller, because like I said, as things move away from the camera, they get smaller. So a little bit here. Now you can see how that's going to work. Probably a little bit too far back. Let's go ahead and just move it like that. Now the left ear needs to pop forward in front of the head, otherwise it's going to look like it's in back of it over here. And we're going to have that happen at a certain point. If we did it here, it would just change the second we got to that frame. So we need to make sure where that's going to change. So as it comes over and it starts to turn, right about there, I think, I'm going to change the ear left order to be in front of the head. We just click it and drag it up. And when you do, you let it go, it pops in front of the head, and we should get a keyframe there when that happens. You can see boom, 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 boom. I don't see the keyframe here, but I believe that's because I have to be on the head layer. Yeah, there it is. So as we move forward, pop, right there it moves forward. Now one thing we probably want to do is hide these lines, that part of that line there, so you don't see that rest of that circle. Easily done by just going back to your ear, the left ear, and this can happen at any time. Probably should happen in the setup here. And we can just click on this little tool here that hides the edges, and we click on that one and this one. And if we need to adjust it at all, just come up here, make sure nothing is selected first, grab a point and just move it to where these are behind the ear a little better. Now you'll see that when this turns, it has that nice line disappear. We're going to go back up to 100. Hopefully I'm making sense here. And since it has moved up in layers, it's now in front of the head, but also we can select all the points of it and move that ear forward where it needs to be when the head is at its final point. So when you pull this back, it looks like it moves across and then flips back behind the head again. And I'm going to click back on the dude layer just to kind of see that a little clearer, and you can see how well that works. So let's get the head turning the other way, and then we'll worry about our masking. All right, so I'm going to click back out to the main line, and you can see that's head turn 1. We can test that with our little on frame 0 or manipulate bones tool, and now we can turn our head. It doesn't go this way yet though, because we haven't done that. All of this stuff with the nose and the eyes sticking out we'll deal with here in just a second. So let's go ahead and click into head turn 2 and move this all the way over here. Now we need to make sure that we move all of our parts over again and then get our ears moved and separated, and what layer order those have to be in at this point too. So when the head starts to turn, let's go ahead and sort the ear popping over. I think right about there, I think our ear right needs to move in front of the head. There we go. Right now it's going to be at frame 100 we need to be on. And we're going to start moving our eyes and nose. Let's move our left eye first. We're going to grab it and move it straight over. It's going to come off, and that's okay. We know we're going to be fixing that. Let's grab our right eye now and move it over approximately where it's going to be. Grab the nose, and see, this gets easier to go. Now the nose is going to give us a problem because as it goes over, it's not facing the right direction. So let's go ahead and see what we can do about that. We want to make sure, and let's see if we can flip that right about here. And we can. So as that does its business, now we can shift it over. So you can see it goes whoop, and we can shift that all the way over. And you can make that a quick flip, or you can make that a slow one like I just did. It's up to you. And we're just gonna make sure we're in the right spot where it doesn't look like that anything's moving too slow, like that kind of does, doesn't it? So we'll just move that and get it going. And it's probably because of our ease in and ease out here. So let's go ahead. We're going to change that. This is the frame interpolation, how that's going to make everything go. We just want just a straight smooth would be fine, I guess. It may still move it a little strangely. No, that's perfect. So smooth. Now you can see that flip. If you don't have to have that, we could make that instantly pop over in one frame by going from here. It's kind of interesting though that we get that. We'll just go ahead and leave it. And now we just move our mouth over right here. We just grab it and slide it over to approximately where it needs to go, making sure that, yeah, it looks like it moves down a little bit. So we're going to lift that up a little bit more, get it about where you think you want it. And then we have to get those ears working. So the right, let's go with the left ear. That's going to be pushed back probably about here. The right ear now is going to be pulled forward to about here. And all of that should work well. Looks good. The layer order changes correctly. And we're going to go back to the main line. Now, something I want to do, like I said, is to fix those lines on the ear. So right away, I'm going to find that ear. I'm going to find my hide line tool, boom and boom. And what we're going to do is grab that point that's kind of sticking out here, pull it in, pull this one in a little bit, and everything is good to go. Let's worry about masking now. That's what we really need to be doing to make sure that all that stuff doesn't come off of the face and look wrong. So this is a really simple thing to do. You just go back up here to our head layer within that, and we're going to double click on it, bringing up our properties for that layer. We're going to click on masking. So there's no masking happening at all right now. So in this group, we want to actually click on hide all, which which is going to be able to mask everything in the group. We say apply, we say OK. Now you notice everything is gone here. Let's double click on the head layer and check the masking. We want to make sure that this one is added to the mask, and we click exclude strokes. That way it doesn't get rid of the strokes on this layer. We say apply and OK. And now we have everything back. Now we want to make sure that everything else, like the ear, should not be masked because it's going to wind up getting cut off. So we're just going to say don't mask this layer and apply. And the same thing with the right ear. We're just going to go in there and not mask that layer either. Otherwise the head will cut it off if the ears were above the head. So let's go ahead and go masking and click don't mask this layer either. We can also use add to mask, I believe, but let's just go ahead and do it this way. And now though, something you will notice back on the dude layer, when I turn his head, we'll just have a look at this. It cuts off everything, which is exactly what we want. So the ears go behind, but the ear is not coming out above where we want it to be. That's because the ear is now, I believe, I did that on purpose, is behind the head. So both of these need to be put in front, but this might be a bug in the program. I have to check this every time to see if the layer order is just not showing up because I'm on frame 0. So the best way to check that is to put your playhead at a certain time on the regular timeline, go to your bone layer, make a keyframe of the head turning, and then make it keyframe it turning back. It works on this side, so it very well could be that, or it could just be the layer order not animating correctly. And I wanted you guys to see that. So now when I go back and forth here, you can see the ear is working perfect on the right ear, but not on the left. So that's not a glitch. This is actually a layer order problem. So back to our main line, we can see that when we move our head now, I had kind of a screw up with some of the layers, but I've understand what's going on. It had nothing to do with you guys. But basically, be very careful about your layer order. And when you set a keyframe on something, make sure you go back and check that that's actually happening correctly. And you can do that by, say, in the head turn here, double clicking on it, bring up your action. And when you click on the head group, you can now see where that layer switches right here on this little keyframe. That's a switching of the layer order. So it's recorded that. Make sure you don't put multiple keyframes, is what I had accidentally done. So now you can see on that one and on this one there is a switching point as to when that comes forward. The other one, I can probably make this one a little bit earlier, and then it'll seem a little more natural. Looks great. Okay, so basically that's how we get our basic head turn. And let's go ahead to the main line, take a look, and let's get the nose sorted out. Now, one of the things I didn't do is fill the nose in. So we're going to remake the nose shape real quick. We're just going to come back down here to the nose, and we're just going to click on create shape again here. And we're going to make sure that we use a fill and a stroke on here. So with this guy, to fill it, we need to actually connect. So we're going to click connect and create. It creates a shape here. It's going to be black because that's the shape, or the color that the shape was. We're going to just select the shape again here. We're going to make sure that the fill is essentially the same color as the face, but we can make it a little less or whatever you want. But if you want to, you can copy the color code from the face. That works just the same. And if you wanted to do that, you could just come in here where our face is, select this head layer, and select the shape tool, select the head, click the color swatch here, and copy this code. So you can just go Control C. It's already highlighted. We say OK. We come back out to our nose, and it's going to be already selected. We just go to the fill, and we control V to paste that in, and we say okay, and now your nose is the right color. Once that is done, you can see that there's no line here because that's already been dealt with, probably because these were made small that it just didn't appear. The nice thing is it's on top, we don't have to worry about that. And now when we move this head, you can see that it does what it needs to do. Now it flips and everything, but if you wanted that nose to stick out over, all you'd have to do was make sure when you double click on here and go into masking that you don't mask this layer, or we add to the mask. Let's find out. Don't mask this layer. I'll apply, say okay, and we're going to want to make sure on the dude layer, when this head turn happens, it's going to be from here to here, that we make that nose stick out a little farther. So basically it's within the head turn, not here on these keyframes, because that's only this bone. We're going to go back to 0. We're going to click on the head turn 1. We're going to come over here, and once we get into where this bone action is here, you see that does actually stick out and look totally fine. I'm not sure why we weren't seeing it before, but it's working great in my opinion here. Maybe we weren't turning the head far enough. So let's go back to the main line, try it again. I think that's what it is. It just wasn't turning farther. Oh, there it is right there. It wasn't turning all the way. So we'll just make sure now that when we turn this, we go all the way with it, and you'll be able to see that nose stick out past the head. Now, the one thing I've seen is a little weird. The ears don't get smaller as they go behind the head, which they should be, like the eye does. And I don't think that eye is doing it either. So these are just final tweaks you can do. So let's, it looks a little bit like Charlie Brown actually now that I think about it. So let's go ahead and go back to our frame 0. We're going to go back to our head turn 1. We're going to go all the way up here, and we're going to make sure we select our ear right. And we're just going to make sure that that gets smaller. So just select the points of it, and you can come in here now, the move there, and just squish that down like so. And that will work perfectly for you. And then we're going to go and make sure that when it gets there, see how it gets smaller as it goes back? That's going to make a much more realistic movement. That other eye gets smaller as it goes back. So now we go to head turn 2 and fix it going the other direction. So as it turns this way, the eye needs to get smaller. The left eye, so IL, we're just going to get that one kind of significantly smaller, I guess. Make sure, see, I made 2 keyframes right here. Just drag the one that's on 101 over, and it will line them back up and everything will be fine. So now we just kind of come back, and I'm not really seeing that. So I think what I did was I got rid of the keyframe that was the smaller keyframe. So now we're just going to make that smaller again and move that up to the right spot. And now we should see that growing as it gets forward. Perfect. And now we just need to make the ear get smaller as well. So ear L is now going to, because it's jumped to the bottom, it's in the back now of the head, because we have that animated layer order on. And we're just going to take that, circle that, and make the ear smaller by scaling it down, and get our layer moved back up, and just kind of check the motion of that now. I think it's moving back a little too far, so we'll just push that forward a little bit. That way the motion looks a little more natural when it shrinks and so forth. So I think that looks pretty darn good myself. Let me know what you think. Another thing you can do too is that mouth looks a little odd as it gets to this point. You can also make keyframes along this action. So as it gets to this point here, if you wanted to, you can create a keyframe right there by simply selecting the mouth, and let's make it get smaller on its corner even. Make sure you click off of everything else and just get that one point there, and then come to your line width tool and make that getting smaller. Even this one can get a little smaller. This is a detail thing, but it's still cool that you can. And as that gets farther over, it'll feel a little more natural, and we can even adjust it there. So you can put multiple keyframes along the way of it doing what it needs to do. That way nothing seems too odd. Like that's kind of an odd thing it's doing. So I'm just going to pull this one back out. I think it got squashed, you know, while it was moving. So it's going to feel slightly more normal. Plus, instead of ease out, just go up to smooth, and those will kind of not do strange, unnatural things. Perfect. So now head turn, the same thing going the other way. So we're just going to come about right about here. I'm just picking an arbitrary place to do it. We select that point. We make that one. Make sure you don't select all the points. There we go. And then we're going to make this one smaller. Maybe this one a little bit smaller too. We want to make sure all these points aren't at ease out, that they're actually in smooth mode. That will just make it move more natural. And then perfect. All right, so that's it, folks. That is pretty much a basic head turn. We can get into turning hair and everything else, but it works exactly like the ears do. When you do hair, we'll get into that in a different video. You can do things like make it in multiple pieces to where those pop behind others, you know, and change the layer order, and add dynamic bones to it and so forth. But that is a basic head turn left and right. Let's just do a quick up and down to add to it and finalize it out. So I'm going to go back to the main line, and now we want to move it up and down. We want to make sure nothing is selected. We want to make sure we're also on the bone layer. Make sure this bone is not selected, and then we're going to create a brand new bone at frame 0. So we're just gonna, and also I want to get rid of these keyframes here too, because they're going to create their own animation that we don't need yet. I'm just going to create a new bone here. This will be an up and down bone, which we could position these any way we want right now, but let's just leave them there. So I'm just going to say up, down, okay? And now we want to, with that bone selected, come to bone, make smart bone dial, and it'll open this up once we're done. But this will be up, down. It's going to go -90 to 90. And it's going to go over a duration of 100 frames, or whatever you want to pick. You can do as many frames as you want. It just gives you time to add in other things if you need to. 100 is a good one. I use 48 a lot. So I'm just going to come up here. We're going to move this over to frame 100 where it's supposed to be. And now we're going to make it go down. Very simple. We're just going to grab the mouth layer. And this is if you did it with layers, just so you see. You can kind of get into trouble sometimes doing it this way, but it'll still work. I'm just going to grab the whole thing and move it down. In fact, we can make it even get a little bit smaller, like it should, perspective-wise. And we're going to take the nose now, and we're going to move it down more as well. You can even change some of the point shape or anything to kind of accommodate for some of the angles. So if we wanted to bring that up and maybe this over slightly or something, you totally can. The eye, of course, now we're going to use these kind of layer settings again and pull the eyes down. And we're going to take the right eye now and pull it down. The ears can come down. You just got to be careful about those because they're still kind of in the back of the head at this point. So I'm going to go with the ear left, pull it down somewhat, not a lot though, and the ear right, same thing. So that's our head up, and that's our head down motion. And if you want to check it, you got it right here. Looks pretty natural. It's not bad. In fact, here's something cool you can do. You can now even change the shape of the head here. So I'm going to go back to the head layer, and you can do this point by point. It's the way I'd rather do it, and just kind of grab one of these points and pull that kind of down, maybe even widen out the sides a little bit here, and then that'll give you kind of a, you know, somewhat of an adjustment. I'm thinking I'm gonna make his eyes go a little bit farther down since we don't have pupils. This way he doesn't look like he's just looking forward a bit. And just make this a little more extreme. It may be better, it may not. Here we go, and that's a bit better. You decide. Okay, cool. And we could even move the head down a little bit as this happens, so that the whole head dips down when he bends it down. There you go. Cool. All right, so now a head up. We need to go to the up down 2, which is a hilarious name. And we're going to go to 100, and this will be our head up position. So let's go ahead and change the shape of the head. Just going to make sure we are not selecting any points yet, and probably lift the neck up slightly, move this down slightly. We can even change these like so. You can change the curves of all this stuff and everything if you want. In fact, you can go in here to adjust everything about your shape in any way that you need. So let's say it thins out when that happens. We're going to move the eyes up. So I'm just going to grab each one of those and pull it up to look more like he's looking up in the sky. And this one's going to go straight up. Try not to spread them out too much as you do that. The nose can come up and it would be like so. And I believe it should probably get a little shorter, in my opinion, not smaller. You can zoom in to deal with this. So yeah, there we go. And up. And then the mouth, of course, needs to move up too. And it can do another getting smaller if you want, but this is actually kind of moving toward you as it tilts out. So we got to remember that. So there we go. And now when we get the ears down, the ears should move down a bit. And you could even angle those or whatever you need. It's not just based on points. You can actually rotate the ear out level like that. And this one here too. Make sure I'm in a good position. And that way when he looks, he's kind of looking up. If you had shading on this, it would look excellent. And that's something that we can deal with in a video in the future here. But let's go ahead and take that nose and just kind of adjust one or two of these points real quick. Maybe a little more in, maybe a little more like so. That way, you know, you get a flatter kind of view of the nose. You could add nostrils or something to it, of course, and it would look different as it did its thing. So now we're going to come back out to the main line. We have these on the bone layer, these two head up and down. You can link them with another bone, with a pin bone, and just move it around to and then hide these to kind of make it a much easier to function rig here. If we wanted to create some animation, we can. We just come in here, grab our head turn, let's move it to the side, let's move it back over here to the other side, and in between if we want, we can even have it go upward. It's going to be a little strange because we didn't perfect this for the turn to the side here. So maybe like so, and we're going to go like so and make this more up there and maybe more down there, and then like he's looking around and then up. Okay, let's see what that does. And turn up, you get it. So turning up, and I don't see him looking down ever, so up, and let's go here, make him look down, and then back up and back to the front, just as an example. All right, obviously way too close together, but you get the idea. Just gonna drag these apart a little bit. They will be too evenly spaced, but so you get the idea. There you go. Basic head turning. There's a lot more you can do with this. A lot more. You can combine this though with complex eye rigs, and like I did earlier videos on, mouth rigs, everything else, hair, dynamics, and everything works with this. So cool. Thanks for watching, and we'll get back to you on the next one.
We're gonna learn animation in Moho and animate everything